On Christmas Eve, I noticed our framed family portrait hanging on the wall, but my face had been completely cropped out. No one said a word about it. I pretended not to care, but it stung. The next day, I handed my parents an envelope and quietly told them, "Don't open it here." They ignored my request, opening it anyway. As soon as they saw what was inside, my mom burst into tears, and my dad's face turned deathly pale. I wish I could say I was completely taken aback when I saw it. I wish I could tell you it was a total surprise, like a shocking plot twist at the end of a film, but honestly, it felt oddly anticipated. I stepped into my parents' living room, brushed off the snow from my boots, and looked up. There it was, a large, glossy, professionally framed photo hanging above the fireplace, as if it were the crown jewel of our family's story. Everyone was in it, my mom in her beloved red blazer, smiling as if she hadn't spent years sighing over everything that wasn't about my sister, my dad, wearing that awkward grin reserved for photos and golf course selfies, and, of course, my sister, front and center in a beige turtleneck that probably cost more than my rent, striking that fake candid pose where she appears to be laughing at some sweet, wholesome joke about her trust fund. And then there was no sign of me, not even shoved to the side, not even blurred in the background, just completely erased. It wasn't a sloppy crop, it was a neat, deliberate removal, as if I'd been photoshopped out of their lives with pristine precision, no messy edges, just gone. I stared at the photo for maybe 4 seconds, 5 at most, long enough for my stomach to churn but not long enough for anyone to notice. Or perhaps they did notice and just didn't care. "Dinner's almost ready," Mom called from the kitchen, as if we were one big, happy family. I could smell rosemary and lemon from whatever she was roasting, those holiday, comforting smells I used to love, back when they still meant something. I hung up my coat, muttered a quick hello, and stepped into the kitchen. Of course, my sister was there, swirling wine in a glass like she was hosting a segment on seasonal pairings. She kissed my cheek in that half-air, half-gesture way, close enough for the act to count but distant enough to avoid any real touch. "You made it," she said, as though this were her house and I was late to her party. I didn't reply, I just smiled, the kind of smile you give after having screamed into a pillow 3 times in 1 month, deciding it wasn't worth using your voice. Dinner was the usual performance. Dad carved the roast like he was auditioning for a Hallmark commercial, Mom complimented my sister's skincare routine twice, and no one asked how I was doing, what I'd been up to, or where I was living. The only question I got was whether I was still driving that little car, a code phrase for "we have no clue what's going on in your life, so fill in the blanks so we can pretend we care." I didn't share anything, instead, I watched as my sister unwrapped a little gift from Mom and Dad, a vintage gold watch. "Nothing fancy," Mom insisted, which was laughable because I spotted the receipt peeking from beneath the tissue paper. "Let's just say I'd have to work for a week and a half to afford it, and that's if I skipped groceries." "Oh my God, you guys," my sister beamed. "This is just wow, I thought you'd like it," Dad said, grinning like he'd just clinched a big deal. Meanwhile, I got a mug that read "Somebody's Favorite Daughter," which was either meant to be ironic or, well, hard to say. After dessert, I excused myself by saying I was tired. Mom offered me the guest room, yes, the guest room, not my room, not your old room, complete with beige sheets, a dusty bookshelf, and a single lamp that flickered if you got too close. I shut the door behind me, turned on the lamp that buzzed to life in its own quirky way, and sat on the edge of the bed. That's when I pulled out the envelope that had been in my bag the whole time, thick ivory paper with an embossed seal. I'd planned to give it to them in the morning, after stockings, after cinnamon rolls, after the performance. But standing there, in that living room, looking at that photo and seeing my existence airbrushed out like a glitch in the family algorithm, I changed my mind. They hadn't just forgotten me, they'd erased me carefully, deliberately, as if I were a bad brand partnership. I turned the envelope over in my hands, it felt heavy. That night, I lay in bed as the house settled around me, the same creaky floorboards, the ticking clock on the wall, Dad snoring somewhere in the hall, Mom's voice drifting up with something about saving the good plates for tomorrow, and my sister's practiced, airy laugh that always seemed rehearsed like the soundtrack to a Golden Child movie. I closed my eyes and thought back to the years, the time I got into my dream college and they said, "We're so proud," before immediately asking if I could defer a year to help my sister with her portfolio, the time I missed rent and called home, and Dad said, "Things are tight right now," while planning a cruise for her birthday, the time I brought a boyfriend home and they forgot his name at dinner, he never came back. I wasn't even mad at him, I was just tired of convincing myself I was overly sensitive, tired of pretending I misunderstood that night in a bed that was supposed to feel like home but didn't. I decided then that tomorrow I would hand them the envelope, no yelling, no crying, not even raising my voice. I would just smile, say Merry Christmas, and let the truth do what years of silence never could. I woke up to the aroma of coffee and cinnamon rolls and the soft sound of my sister talking about luggage weight limits and how stressful travel is, ironically, travel she wasn't even paying for, not the tickets, not the suitcase, not the shoes inside that cost more than my monthly rent. Yes, devastating stuff. I lingered in the guest room longer than necessary, not because I was still tired, but because I wasn't ready to return to the sitcom set that was our family's version of Christmas. I could already hear the fake laughter, the overdone optimism, and maybe even Mom saying something like, "Isn't it nice having everyone together," as if everyone really included me? As if I hadn't spent the last decade as a blurry background character in every family memory. Eventually, I made my way back to the kitchen. Mom was plating scrambled eggs like she was starring in a lifestyle magazine brunch spread. Dad sat at the table, absorbed in his phone. My sister, barefoot and sipping almond milk from a wine glass, greeted the morning with a good morning that barely lifted her eyes from the plate. "Hope you slept okay in the guest room," Mom said without looking up. "The mattress has a personality," I joked as I poured myself some coffee. She laughed as if I were just kidding. We went through breakfast like we always did, no catching up, no questions about my job, my life, or whether I was still in that cramped apartment with creaky stairs, which, for the record, I wasn't. My sister chatted about her upcoming trip to Barcelona and how lucky she was to have parents who supported her dreams. I just nodded along, a filler at an awards show, while the envelope remained hidden in my coat pocket, waiting for its moment. My thoughts drifted back to everything that led me here, the day I graduated high school, the scholarship that wasn't a full ride but enough if I juggled part-time work. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with paperwork spread out, asking if they could help with the remainder. My mom gave me a look, as if I had asked to borrow her wedding ring, and Dad mentioned something about the timing being rough, still catching up from the bathroom remodel, the one with heated floors and a Bluetooth bathtub. 2 months later, my sister got a new car for her 18th birthday, white leather seats, a custom stereo, a bow on top. She cried when they handed her the keys and told them they were the best parents in the world. I stood by the recycling bin, holding a $20 bill tucked inside a graduation card that read, "You're going places." And you know what? I still went off to college. I juggled 3 jobs, got only 4 hours of sleep a night, survived on too much instant ramen, graduated with honors, moved to a new city, and started all over again. I never asked for help after that, and they never offered when I was laid off 2 years ago. I didn't call when I got sick and couldn't afford my medication. I didn't ask when my apartment flooded and I lost most of my furniture. I bought a used mattress off Craigslist and made do. Meanwhile, my sister posted sponsored Instagram stories from Santorini. I used to wonder if maybe it was me, maybe I was just harder to love, more reserved, less flashy. Maybe I should have joined a sorority, smiled more, been more outgoing, or played piano instead of working diner shifts so they would notice me. Maybe if I hadn't made things so easy, always independent, always fine, they would have seen I needed help too. Then I remembered my 8th birthday. I had invited 6 friends over, baked cupcakes myself, and when Mom forgot to pick up the pizza, we ended up eating cheese slices on saltines. My sister had a dance recital the next day, so the party ended early. They promised, "We'll make it up to you next year." They never did. And then there was the time I won a state science competition. My school called home with a quick text, "Nice job, smiley face." That was it, no dinner, no framed certificate, no recognition ever again. Meanwhile, my sister landed a minor role in a shampoo commercial, and they threw her a party with balloons and a custom cake that said future star. So no, it wasn't me, it never was. The twist came earlier this year, unexpectedly. I wasn't really looking for it. I had gone to a local records office to request proof of address for a job application, just some routine paperwork. While there, something caught my eye, a document with my name on it attached to a property address I didn't recognize. At first, I assumed it was a mistake, maybe someone with the same name. But curiosity took over, and I started digging. I made some requests, sent a few carefully worded emails, and the deeper I went, the more tangled things became. There were secrets I'd never been told, buried truths, and at the center of it all, me. I didn't react immediately. I didn't confront anyone, I just observed, as I always had. Only this time, I wasn't powerless, I had facts, solid paper proof. And with every new discovery, a strange calm took over, as if I'd been underwater my whole life and only just came up for air. They hadn't forgotten me, they'd used me, my name, my rights, my silence. Now I had something that would make them listen. That morning after breakfast, I went upstairs and changed, taking my time. I let them do their thing, gather around the tree, pass around the gifts, bask in their curated holiday glow. When I came back downstairs, they were already halfway through unwrapping. My sister was opening something expensive and pretending to be surprised. Mom wore that misty look she saves for moments she can later post about. Dad turned to me, "Get any sleep?" I smiled, enough. He nodded and went back to watching my sister admire her designer tote. I sat down quietly, reached into my coat pocket, and placed the envelope on the table beside the coffee mugs and crumpled wrapping paper. No one noticed, at first. They always notice eventually, but it was too late. About 10 minutes later, Mom finally spotted the envelope. She couldn't stand for anything to sit on her reclaimed wood table without coasters, ceremony, or purpose. She picked it up like it might be a bill or a misdelivered wedding invitation. "What's this?" she asked, addressing the room. I didn't look up. I just took another sip of coffee and said, "That's from me." Dad glanced over from where he was fishing through the last bits of wrapping paper, probably hoping something had fallen under the tree. "You didn't have to get us anything," he said with a smile, as if I'd handed them a mug with a cheesy quote. "I know," I replied. "I wanted to." That got their attention. Mom sat back down, turning the envelope in her hands. "Should we open it now?" I shrugged. "I'd rather you didn't." But naturally, they opened it. Dad leaned over her shoulder as she broke the seal, and for a few seconds, all I heard was the sound of paper sliding free, the quiet crinkle of shifting pages. I watched my sister adjust the handles on her new designer tote as if it were a newborn named after a French city. Then the silence changed. It grew heavier. I didn't even have to look up. I could feel it, that moment between realization and nausea, like discovering the milk in your coffee is sour right after you've swallowed. Dad exhaled softly through his nose. Mom's eyes were darting as she flipped to the second page, then the third, as if trying to outrun what she was reading. My sister looked over. "What is it?" she asked. They didn't answer. She tried again a bit louder. "What's going on?" Still nothing. That was my cue. "I figured it was time you knew," I said, slowly standing up. "Merry Christmas." "What is this?" Mom finally asked in a quiet, flat tone, not angry, not confused, just blank. "This is a copy of Grandpa's will." She blinked. "I saw his will. We handled the estate." "No," I said, "you handled what you said was the estate. You never showed me the full will, just that he left a few keepsakes and some cash for funeral expenses." He stared at me, blinking too much. "That version didn't mention the rental property in Old Briar." I continued, "Probably because you were already collecting rent from it by then." Dad dropped the papers on the table as if they'd burned him. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "Oh, you know," I said, "public records, title searches, tax filings, archived emails, a couple of phone calls, and a very patient lawyer." My sister finally stood up. "Wait, what rental property?" "The one by the park?" I turned to her. "The one you used for that photo shoot last year?" "Yeah, that one." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Mom finally found her voice again. "Sweetheart, this isn't what it looks like." I smiled. "That's funny because it looks like you used my name, my inheritance, and my legal rights to fund your lifestyle while telling me there was nothing left for me." "It wasn't like that," she said too quickly. "It's complicated." "It wasn't," I replied. "The will is crystal clear. The house was left to me as the sole beneficiary, with full title transferred, which means all that rent you've been collecting is technically stolen, along with the unauthorized renovations." Dad rubbed his temples like the conversation was giving him a migraine. "I hoped it was," I thought, "because I knew you wouldn't understand." He muttered, "You're always so dramatic." That got a laugh out of me. "Right, I'm dramatic. You edited me out of a family portrait and committed inheritance fraud, but sure, let's blame my tone." My sister looked genuinely confused, like someone had pulled the rug out from under her and she was still trying to steady herself. "But that house paid for my tuition," I said, "and the car, and the Mexico trip, and probably a few handbags along the way." "That's not fair," she snapped. "You didn't need it. You were always the independent one. You never asked for help because I was told there was nothing to ask for." "You made sure of that," I replied. Mom's voice softened, shifting into careful territory, the same tone she used when trying to return something at a boutique without a receipt. "We didn't think you'd want the responsibility. You were busy, always so far away." "I was far away," I said, "because you made it that way." "Very clear." "I wasn't welcome here, Dad," I said. He pushed back his chair. "You need to calm down," he replied. I turned to him. "Need a lawyer?" He froze. "I'm not suing," I added, "but I've officially reclaimed the property. The tenants have been notified, and rent goes to me now. Your access is revoked." My mom looked like she might cry. After all, that house was our lifeline, our income. I tilted my head. "Maybe you shouldn't have stolen it." "We're family," she whispered. "No," I said. "You're people I once called family, but there's a difference." My sister folded her arms. "Do you really think this makes you better than us?" "Not better," I replied, "just no longer beneath you." The silence that followed wasn't calm, it was thick and heavy, making your ears ring. No one moved or breathed. My dad stared at the envelope as if it might explode. My mom's face went blank. My sister looked like she was waiting to be jolted awake. I picked up my coat. "Wait," my mom said, rising. Can't we at least talk about this? You just did, I said. For years, every time you made decisions without me, every time you left me out, every time you said I'd understand someday. Dad's jaw tightened. If you leave now, don't bother coming back. I paused at the door and looked back one last time. I think that's the first thing we've agreed on. Then I left. Outside, the air was sharp, cold but clean, hitting my lungs as a reminder that I was still here, still standing, still real. I slid behind the wheel, let the engine hum, and drove. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just breathed. Sometimes the strongest statement is silence, and the loudest scream is walking away. 3 weeks passed before the first message arrived. It was from my mom, short, polite, as if she'd rewritten it 5 times and still doubted it would land. Hi sweetheart, we've been talking and think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we chat sometime this week? Hope you're well. Love you. The note ended awkwardly with just love you, like a coat hanging on the wrong hook. I didn't respond. 2 days later, another message came, please, don't let this one thing ruin everything. Your sister is very upset. Dad's trying to stay calm, but you know how he gets when he feels blindsided. Blindsided, yes, when he's caught off guard, not when he commits fraud or lies to his daughter for years. No, it's just that feeling, poor guy. So I said nothing. Then a voicemail from Dad appeared. I didn't listen, I just stared at the notification and deleted it. The last time he called me kiddo was when I offered to help him set up his retirement account, and he said, let's leave the money stuff to people who understand it. Just like him. Next came an email from my sister, you really think this makes you the winner? Fine, take the house, but don't come crying back when you realize money doesn't buy family. A day later, another message, Mom and Dad are really stressed, they're talking about selling the condo. That was what you wanted? Congrats. I read that one twice, not because I felt bad, but to be sure I understood how much the loss of our property was unraveling our family's finances. The house had been the backbone of everything, rent from 3 units covering the mortgage, vacations, part of my sister's education, and even some of Mom's cosmetic work, which she swore was just great skincare. When I took it back, the whole machine sputtered, and I hadn't even started asking for back rent, at least, not yet. By spring, whispers started circulating among mutual acquaintances. One neighbor mentioned that my parents were trying to refinance their condo, another said Dad had taken up consulting, which meant cold calling old clients, hoping someone still owed him a favor. Mom picked up weekend shifts at a boutique downtown, the kind of place she used to shop at, now ringing up yoga pants for influencers, probably convincing herself it was only temporary. My sister moved back home, the apartment in the city was too expensive, and her clients had dried up. Her art collective had either disbanded or imploded, it was hard to tell, and frankly, I didn't care. The GoFundMe she launched for a new creative chapter raised a grand total of $83. 2 of those dollars were from my ex-boyfriend. I don't know why that made me laugh, but it did. Meanwhile, I fixed up the house, my house. It was dusty at first, a little unloved, but solid. I hired a contractor to freshen the paint and replace the old windows. I cleared out the furniture my parents had stored there and donated most of it, keeping only a navy blue armchair that I vaguely remembered from childhood, the only piece that didn't come with strings attached. The tenants were kind. One even left me a thank you note after I lowered their rent by $50, saying, "You were the first landlord who treated us like human beings." That meant more to me than any of my parents' recycled apologies ever could. Funny what you notice when the noise dies down. The silence that once felt heavy became peaceful, like finally having room to stretch. I stopped checking my phone every hour. I stopped bracing for the next guilt trip. I started sleeping through the night. Then one afternoon, I found a letter in my mailbox, not an email, not a text, a real letter, with Mom's handwriting on the envelope. I held it for a minute before opening it, not because I thought it might be sincere, but to mark the moment. The envelope smelled of her perfume. Inside were 2 pages neatly written with phrases like "we didn't know, it wasn't intentional, and we only wanted what was best for everyone." My favorite part was, "You've always been so strong, we didn't realize you needed anything from us." That's what people say when they benefit from your silence and need an excuse for never asking why you stopped talking. She closed with, "We hope someday you'll come home, maybe we can start over, maybe we can be a family again." No mention of restitution, no mention of the stolen income or lies, or the fact that I had been cropped out of the family photo like a bad ex. I put the letter in a drawer, didn't throw it away, didn't reply. That was the last time she reached out directly. 3 years later, I bumped into an old neighbor at a bookstore. She asked if I was still managing the property, and I smiled and said yes. She hesitated before adding, "I hear your parents had a rough time." I said nothing. She nodded. "Well, you look happy, that's good." And I replied, "I am." I still live in the house, not because I have to or out of spite, but because it's peaceful. It's mine. I wake up to birds and sunlight instead of footsteps outside my door or passive-aggressive comments about never calling. I rebuilt the backyard garden, repainted the front steps, and filled the windowsills with plants that thrive on sunlight and low expectations. There's even a photo on my mantle of me standing in front of the house, holding the keys, just me. It's my favorite photo because no one had to be cropped out. I still hear from them occasionally, a forwarded email, a message from a cousin, once a Christmas card that simply said, "Thinking of you. Hope you're well." No return address. I didn't reply. And the funny thing is, I'm not angry anymore. I'm not waiting for closure, justice, or even an apology. I already have what they never gave me, my name on something permanent, my place in the world, my own story. I used to believe that if I tried hard enough, if I earned it, maybe one day they'd love me the way they loved her. But the love that matters isn't earned, it's given freely, and what they offered was conditional. What I gave myself was everything else. So no, I don't miss them. I don't replay the conversations, I don't imagine dramatic reunions, I don't dream of a perfect apology that makes everything right. The life I have now didn't come wrapped in a bow or blessed, it came from doing the hard thing, from walking away. And that, in the end, was the only gift I ever needed.